Okay, so we're just gonna have to deal with regular camera audio for today because my mic has decided that it hates me and it's not really working anymore. I've already tried to film this video 3 times and the audio is like working and then it just cuts out to this blurry, noisy annoyance. But I digress. The focus of this video is on a collection of 5 different tips for winning NaNoWriMo, and these tips are ones that I consider maybe unpopular or kind of unorthodox or even chaotic. So maybe it makes sense that the video itself has been chaotic. I just think there are so many wonderful, helpful NaNoWriMo tips out on the internet, especially going around right now because we're about to get into NaNoWriMo, and I think that most of them are absolutely wonderful. But the reason that I wanted to bring you these tips or reminders is that I feel like a lot of the tips for how to win NaNoWriMo generally expect you to be super organized and completely on top of things all month and have like a perfectly planned out schedule and everything like that. And a lot of those tips are very helpful, but I kind of wanted to provide a couple that are not super organized and a little bit different than the usual. So my first kind of unpopular NaNoWriMo tip is that consistency is not necessarily key. There are so many tips going around and so many of the helpful videos that people provide and just resources in general kind of express the importance of consistency during NaNoWriMo, which is totally fair. I get it. But for some of us, consistency is something that we struggle with. Not all of us are good with consistency, and I find that a lot of creative people are not necessarily the best at consistency. So my tip is to throw consistency out the window if you feel like there's already too much pressure on yourself to hit the daily word count goal for NaNoWriMo, which I think is like 1,667 or something. Because if you hit that number every single day, you will hit 50,000, which is great. But you can also hit 50,000 in an infinite number of ways and in a variety of different word count goals, and they don't have to be a consistent static number every single day. In fact, for half the month, you could only write 100 words a day. But if you have a few other days that are massive word counts, like 3,000 to 10,000 words a day, and you just do a few of those, you can also hit 50,000. So rigid consistency in the way that it's kind of promoted in the context of NaNoWriMo, it doesn't have to be the way that you achieve the word count. And if you think about it, writing the same amount of words every single day shows consistency in the short term, but having a month, for example, where you have 2 10,000 word days that you've organized for and a couple 3,000 to 5,000 word days, and then every other day you only write a little bit, obviously over the course of the month, that doesn't look consistent. That is sporadic and chaotic and all over the place for the month, regardless of whether or not you hit the goal. But in the long term, so if you extend like the term that you're looking at, if you do that every single month and you have those like varying word count days, that now becomes consistent. So this tip is kind of just a reminder that the type of consistency that people look for in NaNoWriMo, like 1,667 words every single day, doesn't have to be the type of consistency that works for you. Because a lot of us are using NaNoWriMo to kind of jumpstart our writing. And although having super variable word count days over 1 month looks like inconsistency, if you extend that and you continue writing for the next few years and you always do your months like that, that is still consistency. It just looks different than NaNoWriMo because NaNoWriMo is such a short, high-speed word count project to be working on. So yeah, that's tip number 1. Consistency does not have to be key. Tip number 2, everywhere is your office now. Forget about creating the perfect workspace, the perfect working desk, the perfect environment, romanticizing everything about your little corner of your room or wherever it is that you're going to get all these words in. NaNoWriMo is a short and kind of hectic timeline for writing this many words. And I think that if you rely on having the perfect environment set up every single time just to get any of those words done, it's a lot easier to fail. What makes it a lot easier to win is allowing yourself to not need that kind of perfect environment to thrive in your writing. That means maybe taking 10 minutes on your work break to sit on your phone and write out a couple scenes or the beginning of a chapter, or just taking time to work on your story and get those word counts in. Because at the end of the day, writing can happen anywhere. It doesn't need to be pretty, clean, organized, perfectly set up workspace. It can be literally anywhere. And sometimes we realize we're coming home from the bar, it's almost midnight, we're 4 beers deep, and all of a sudden we have a fantastic idea for a connecting scene between two of our chapters. And if I wait until I get home or until I have the perfect writing environment set up to actually get those words out, I feel like I've now lost out on, the moment when it came. So I think it's important to remember that all of those little unplanned moments of writing and ideation and taking advantage of getting the words down when the inspiration comes to you, I think that's really important. And those tiny little chunks of words that you write will add up over time. So yeah, tip number 2, embrace the chaos. Everywhere is your writing office now. When the words come to you, get them out. And that is such a great way to also build habits to kind of take advantage of your moments of inspiration when you have them, and to sort of honor the creative chaos that comes to you in the unplanned moments, which is something that I'm trying to get better at. I don't want to wait to let the creativity flow until I have the perfect environment around me. Tip number 3 is to cheat, or rather rebel. Nano-rebel. The term nano-rebel is something that some writers use to refer to themselves, and all it means is that you've modified your goals or you've adjusted the rigidity of NaNoWriMo so that it suits you a little bit better. And I don't think there is anything wrong with that. It's really easy during Nano, just because of the nature of the challenge, to feel like you need to be perfect and to feel like the 50,000 words that you get is this collection of perfectly freshly drafted words. But that's not necessary. If you want to write 20,000 words worth of character backstory and you think that's really going to help your story, do it and then count the words. If you're doing like a stream of consciousness journal to try and get through certain writer's block, count the words. You need to adjust your outline or some of your planning documents. Count the words that you've written. Don't want to type fresh words anymore? Try transcribing your words so that you can just talk and then get the words out from there, and then count those words as well. If you don't want to track words at all, don't. Track the hours that you've written, or track how many chapters you've finished, or how many scenes you've finished, or find something else that is more qualitative rather than quantitative. It's all going towards your story anyways, and there is no use in you burning yourself out during November and then not wanting to write again afterwards because you've put so much pressure on yourself during November to be perfect. And if anyone tries to guilt you or invalidate you because you're being a nano rebel this year, send them my way and I will have a chat with them. Okay, so tip number 4 is to not think of your NaNoWriMo project as your entry into the publishing world. One of my favorite things about NaNoWriMo is that there's kind of like this eruption of creative energy, and it's like the writing community comes out in full force. There are people who have been writing for years, there are people who are brand new to writing, but because of the collective energy and excitement for working on a project during this challenge, there's just so much motivation, and that can be a really great kickstart for people who want to get back into writing or just want to get into writing in general. It's just such a good month to find that motivation, which is fantastic. But I also see a lot of people kind of talking about NaNoWriMo and almost taking it too seriously, I guess. So that's why I just want to say, don't consider the project that you're working on for NaNoWriMo to be your entry into the publishing world. I feel like that might be a little contradicting because I've mentioned personally that the story I'm planning to work on for NaNoWriMo is going to be, or I'm hoping that it's going to be, the first fiction novel that I query to traditional agents, but I'm also actively trying to not put that kind of pressure on it because I know that it is also going to be months, if not years, until it's like ready for the point that it's going to be queried. And even then, I kind of just want the experience of querying. I'm not looking at this story as if it's going to be my debut traditionally published novel and it's going to do incredible things and it's going to launch my career. I'm not thinking of it as that, and I'm not putting that kind of pressure on it because I know that NaNoWriMo is a time where people get really sucked into just getting the words out, and that means that a lot of the words are not necessarily going to be the final words. And I think that's okay. Sometimes we just need to write words even if we know they're not the best words. Sometimes that quantity is kind of just what we need to get out of our brains in order to start writing the good words. Something that I've spoken about countless times on my channel is that I genuinely think of my creativity as a little bit of a pipeline. And that means that if I have this infinite pipeline of creativity in my brain. I know there's good stuff in there because it's infinite. Like, I always have more creativity in me, but at the same time, I know that not all of it is going to be good, and I know that often I'm gonna have to like empty out the pipeline and work through everything that's not good in order to get to the good words, the really like incredible words that change my story for the better. So I think it's a good idea to try and avoid putting pressure on your NaNoWriMo project as though it is your entrance into professional publishing. I think that kind of pressure paired with the context of NaNoWriMo, we know it's a challenge, we know it's a massive word count, we know it's very difficult. And then adding that kind of mental pressure is really just like a very easy way to burn out. Instead, try and shift your mindset for NaNoWriMo into one of, I'm having fun, I'm getting practice, I'm emptying out the pipeline, I'm trying a new hobby, I'm trying to do something new and creative that I've never done before, and I'm taking advantage of the fact that the entire writing community, or not the entire, but a massive chunk of the writing community is also involved. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that there's such an incredible collective energy for this right now, and there's going to be so much support from other writers that are participating. So yeah, take the professional pressure off of your NaNoWriMo project, because I feel like that is just like one of the worst things to do. And finally, my final chaotic, unpopular tip is to go off the rails. I know that we spend so much time plotting and planning for NaNoWriMo and to prepare for NaNoWriMo, and this is even something that I've done. Like, I've worked on my plot. I've worked on creating a plan for how I'm going to get through NaNoWriMo, and I've worked on giving you all resources as well on how to do that and how to organize yourself. But at the end of the day, I am just growing more and more aware of how chaotic my creativity really is. And because of learning about how I work with my creativity, as well as still actively healing from burnout, which is something that I am working on, I'm trying to remind myself that it is okay to go off the rails. We have an entire month before NaNoWriMo. We have Preptober to literally prepare for NaNoWriMo. And people put a lot of work into that. I've put a lot of work into that. But I think the duality and the beautiful thing about creativity is that you can plan as much as you want, and that is really going to help you finish a project and understand what you're doing with the project. But if you cut off the chaotic part, and if you shut down the kind of like chaotic, excited, creative part of your brain, and you don't allow yourself to go off the rails and make changes to your plan, then I think you're missing out on a really, really key part of what makes stories and art great. So even though you've spent a month planning and you're so excited to get into this, don't be afraid to let yourself try something new and deviate from the plan or the plot or whatever you had initially planned. If you consider yourself a plotter, try pantsing a little bit. If you consider yourself a pantser, try plotting a little bit. If you have a wild idea that just pops into your head, but it's not in your outline, just go with it. Run with it and see where it goes, because you might find an incredible part of your story that you wouldn't have found if you were trying to just stick to the outline. This is writing, you know, writing is creativity, this is storytelling. And no matter how hard we try to kind of box in the rules of storytelling and make it more formulaic and act like there's this perfect plan and algorithm that you can follow in order to make a great story, no matter how much you do that, I believe that there is always some part of creativity that can never be organized or boxed in or made rigid. There's always going to be a fluid exploration that allows for even better storytelling and even better creativity. And if you allow yourself to deviate from the plan, especially when you're doing such an intense challenge as is NaNoWriMo, you'll also probably finish the month being a lot less stressed and a lot less burnt out, because you've allowed yourself the space to actually play with your art, which is, I feel like that's the whole point, you know? Those are my chaotic, unpopular NaNoWriMo tips. I don't even know what to call them. It's mostly just a collection of reminders that I hope you all keep in mind when you dive into this challenge tomorrow. I will be posting vlogs to my channel all throughout the month of November regarding NaNoWriMo, and I will also be posting extra behind the scenes stuff on my Patreon, which you are more than welcome to join. It's linked down below. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I wish you all the best in NaNoWriMo. I would love to hear about what your projects are that you'll be working on. And yeah, that's it. So thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to smile, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.